Hi everyone, my name is Declan McGlynn. Welcome to Friday Forum Live, Point Blank's weekly broadcast bringing you exclusive tutorials, artist interviews and industry insight every Friday, live from East London. Today we are joined by Seamus Haji to take a look at one of his new tracks, Feel It, and some sampling techniques in Ableton Live. So today is all about sampling in Ableton Live and taking some old disco classics and beefing them up for the modern era. And remember, if you want to learn a lot more Ableton techniques, you can learn it on our Ableton Live diploma, which is you can find out more about on our website, pointblanklondon.com. And remember, we are completely live today. Get your questions in the chat for Seamus, and we'll get to them throughout the broadcast. Welcome back. How's it going?
Good, yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. So today, when we say sampling, it could be samplers, it could be, there's a lot of different things. So today we're focusing on sampling older tracks, I guess, and making edits and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this track, do you want to introduce what it is? Has it just come out recently?
Yeah, it came out maybe 6 weeks ago, so It's my latest single called Feel It. It's on my Big Love label. Yeah. It's been doing really well, yeah. It's been performing really well on Spotify. If only I've got the amount of buys and downloads as the amount of plays I've got on Spotify, I'd be a happy man.
Yeah.
But no, it's been doing really well. Yeah, it was inspired by a sample. That's what started it, really.
Mm-hmm. So, can we just play the track maybe so people can get an idea of what it sounds like?
Yeah.
And we can all groove with it. You can do it. You can feel it. And we can all groove with it. You can do it. You can feel it, and we can all groove with it. You can do it, you can feel it, and we can all groove with it. You can do it, you can feel it, and we can all groove with it. You can do it, you can feel it, and we can all groove with it. You can do it. You can feel it, and we can all groove with it. You can do it, you can feel it, and we can all groove with it. Groove with it, 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 groove with it.
So, do you want to start by maybe telling us how you approach? I mean, obviously, you heard, was it the sample that came first in this case, or was it the groove?
Yeah.
It's kind of got that French house filtered kind of vibe going on, yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't know the track, to be honest, and it's from the early '80s. And
Cheryl Lee Ralph, I believe.
Yeah, Cheryl Lee Ralph, and I was at a party and someone played it. They're playing a lot of disco re-edits, but this track they just played the full-length track, and I heard it. I was like, I remember it just grabbed me. I think when the chorus came, it really felt really emotive, and I was like, what's that? What's that? And then I found out what it was, looked for it, and bought the original record. It's got I think it's got an instrumental and a vocal mix, and sort of digitized it, recorded it in, and I just wanted to do my own re-edit, basically, just something that's a bit more playable for a lot of people, just to update it a bit, because the verses are a little bit more cheesy, and for the younger generation, it's probably more about the chorus. Yeah. So I did this re-edit here, which I just did for my own personal, which is literally just using the original parts, but I just chopped little bits, like I've taken the snare and some sort of hits with delay that I added to it, and sort of made it more DJ friendly, so it's got like an intro, just adding delay and stuff like that. And it would just build, and I just sort of, just filtered up the vocal. So it's more of a sort of dubby sort of vocal edit for my own personal use, and it doesn't go into the verses. So I was playing that in the clubs, certain clubs and on my radio show. And then I just had an idea of doing a track with it, but maybe not just based solely around the sample, you know. And that's kind of what led to me doing this track. So that was the idea for it. And I kind of wanted to make it more about the feel it. There's bits of the vocal I took where she's saying feel it, and I wanted to really focus around that because it feels really dynamic and powerful. So that was the main inspiration for it.
Yeah. So then the groove came, right? You just sampled it,
Yeah.
and then, I mean, in terms of approaching dropping a track into Ableton, is it just a case of going in, creating warp markers, moving things around, tightening up a bit? Because sometimes those older tracks are a bit looser on the performance.
Exactly. I do quite a few really. We were talking about this earlier. I do quite a few radiates. So I do radiates as reloved by Seamus Haji for Midnight Riot and labels like that. And some of them are disco or boogie. Some of them are like live drums. It's not being played to a click drum, so the beats really fluctuate. So I'll put it in and I'll sort of time stretch it using the warp markers, but then you have to go in and use the warp markers. Sometimes I'll even just have to chop sections myself and then place them. So like in the old days, I think when I first started producing, I had an Akai S950 sampler. You'd sample something, then you'd play it so you had it on the keyboard, and literally every sort of syllable of the drum track, like kick, hi-hat, closed hat, snare, you'd kind of play it over your beat to the tempo you want it to be. So really going into it. Yeah?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'll do sometimes, so I'll really just split it up. I won't just rely on the warp markers, but with Ableton, it's brilliant. I mean, a track like this was a lot easier because you can hear it's played with a drum machine. It's playing to a click drum or it's a drum machine. So it's slightly easier, yeah. But even when you're recording from vinyl, it can shift around a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
So I just go in and until it's really tight, I won't be happy with it. So once it's really tight, then I can start thinking about what I'm going to do with it.
And how do you approach then building a groove around something? I mean, thickening something up that might not have the modern production sound?
I think with this, because I do work with an engineer as well, so I normally get my ideas together and then I'll go in. And I think with this, I had an idea for a bass. It might have been inspired by an old house record, a Chicago house record. Sometimes it's just something in my head. So I have a kind of rhythmical idea. And then it's just working out the chord progression that's there that we can work around. So and I'm not that musical, so he will sort of work out and go, okay, that's where the chords are. I might play a bass line in, and it's pretty much trying to work it in the constraints of where we could go musically, but keeping it quite simple.
Yeah.
And I think I probably would have started off with, once we got the vocal tight, it was a case of getting the drums in, and the drums are quite straightforward.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of people already asking about the kick.
Yeah.
About that kick drum, yeah. It sounds pretty fat.
It is. So it's quite simple. There's a certain software, I think it was Nicky Romero has come up with this software you can create your own kick drum. Yeah. And it's all about, you've got to be clever, haven't you? Because if you've got like a long sustained bass, you don't want a long sort of sustained.
Yeah, that's quite a long kick.
It's quite a long kick. But the bass that in it was very short.
Yeah.
It moves around
It's
a lot.
staccato bass.
Yeah, so it's one or the other, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or you've got a really short kick and a long sustained bass. So if you listen to like Eric Prydz, a lot of the time he does long sustained bass lines, then his kick's quite short.
Very short and transient. And
Yeah, exactly. So on this, I wanted to keep it quite tough. To me, it's just a house vibe, basically. But you know, when I make stuff, it's for the dance floor, and now, you know, it's for the sort of younger generation as well. And they're used to hearing stuff that's quite in your face.
Yeah.
So the drums are quite, you know, straightforward, and then it was a case of getting the kind of bass groove. I think we used a massive and a silent, and we sort of layered them up basically. Let's have a look. And again, it's just about kind of, there's two layers. There's two layers there. And it's just about creating tension as well. So it's like, if you listen to the track, I'm really happy because it's got like an intro, it's got the main area, the main section, the breakdown, you've got an outro, there's a bit of a story there. There's always something happening and changing. So this was probably me just playing that in, and then wondering when we could take it musically, and then it kind of developed. So it's not really established itself that far into the track. It's just kind of teasing a bit of bass, giving it some pulse, and then obviously you get the it goes into the main sample. And then it's a case of trying to introduce the bass.
You can feel it.
It's quite a drastic change there. I mean, some people mentioned that in the comments as well. Was that a challenge to marry the two, especially because that's such a modern future, almost like future house kind of sound, and then you got disco, big diva vocal.
Yeah.
Putting those together, is that difficult?
I guess it was a bit different, yeah, but I was working on a couple of different ideas because I did another mix as well that's a bit more of an M1 organ sort of vibe, a bit sort of deep house as they call it now, but to me it's like early 90s stuff, you know. But I just wanted to give it a new, just update it. But I really love the original, so most youngsters are going to be like, what's that? And I didn't know it. 5 years ago, I didn't know it, even though it's my era. It was just on a different scene. It was more the high energy sort of scene.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But yeah, it was a challenge, but I think it's quite interesting when you do that because people hear that sample and it's like, okay, and people who do know it love it. You can just see, if they don't know it, it just gets a great reaction. And I was playing at a club last week in London, and they knew the original there, you know, so you can see the reaction. And then it just drops into something a lot more modern. So I like that. I like the it keeps it interesting. Yeah. It's quite dynamic.
And in terms of arrangement, I mean, is there a set kind of strategy you have for arranging tracks in terms of doing the whole DJ 32-bar intro, 16-bar breakdown and stuff like that?
There is a bit of that now, yeah. Just because I think people in clubs are used to hearing. I mean, I try not to put breakdowns in that are too long, but I think with this, when you've got that kind of structure, it helps when you're trying to get in and out of one vibe and into another. So I wanted to go into the old sort of early 80s sample, the disco vibe, then come back out of again, and you've got that sort of power. You've got that point where you can impact the transition, basically. So there is a bit of a structure, and it never used to be like that. Yeah. Records were a lot more sort of verse, chorus. You might have a little bit of a breakdown, but it was very much vocal-based. And I think now people just, especially youngsters, they've got that high attention deficit disorder going on. It's like they need something happening all the time, you know. What's happening
they're
now?
just on their phones within 2 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Where's the breakdown? Where's the drop? You know. So there is a kind of structure, which I guess people are used to that. But I try not to be too formulaic. But I guess I've been making music for a long time, so you do get into a bit of a routine, which you can abide. You know the rules. You know what happens. You know what works on the dance floor. So there is a structure there.
That can be a slippery slope, can't it? Where because you just go, oh, I know this works, but you just end up doing the same, kind of recycling the same thing.
Yeah.
And challenge yourself a bit.
Exactly. I think with this, it was already a bit of a challenge because it's quite an unusual sample.
Yeah.
Not many people are going to know it. I just love it, you know, and I wanted to do something with it. So it's kind of like trying to make it work in that kind of context. So, I mean, I don't hear a lot of records using samples like that, maybe with this kind of groove, but I wanted to do it. I like the idea.
Yeah. In terms of edits, I mean, you mentioned you do edits as well. I mean, where do you find your tracks? Do you go track hunting for stuff to edit, or you'll just hear something?
Well, like with this one, I just happened to be in a club and I heard it, and then it made me want to do a re-edit it and do this with it. But normally, I've got things in mind from 10, 20 years ago that there might be a certain part of a track where most of it's rubbish, but this is maybe 1 minute or 30 seconds that is really good, and I just think I can make a whole track out of that. Once you give it the wave effect, you know, drop things in and out and sort of build it in the right places, make it interesting. So I've got loads of things like that which are earmarked, and if I do edits, I don't really take really well-known tracks and just sort of modernise them. I mean, I do a lot of that with remixing. I've done a lot of remixes of old tracks, and I'll modernise it. But with re-edits, what keeps me interested is digging out those sort of obscure things, and I'll do it, and I'll send it to a friend who's like really into disco and boogie and that sort of thing, and he'll be like, right, I didn't know those tracks, you know, because it might just be a really weird track, it might be a weird part on the record, so you wouldn't play the whole record in a club, because some of it's just terrible, but there's that main bit that's the sweet spot, you know, it's just making more of that.
Yeah, and do you have any advice for anyone for beefing up older tracks and making them sound bigger?
Well, I think I'm working on a couple of tracks at the moment, actually. I've got a couple of re-edits I'm doing. I also do stuff as Big Bang Theory, which is very sort of disco house based. And the most important thing we were talking a little bit about this earlier, is getting the loops and samples in time, because sometimes I hear things on download sites and it's just not in time. You know, the beats aren't in time with the sample, it's flanging, just sounds rubbish. So it's all about getting it in time, and some tracks are more of a challenge than others, you know. And also just the way you do it, try and be clever, try and make it interesting, you know. I mean, on this, if we go to the sample, let's have a look, the main original sample. So there I've got one loop, which I took from here. And again, you know, once I've got it in time, I'm happy with it, and this wasn't too difficult. That's just a little part of the track that I used to sort of create a little bit of tension for the intro of the track. And then it's very much about just punctuating that. With the vocal, so I wanted to call it Feel It, and that's the bit of the vocal I've taken. And again, it's just like stretching it out really until you get into the main part of it. Rather than it just being continual all the way through, because it's more of a track idea than a re-edit. But I think it's important to get it in time, get it solid, then you can concentrate on your beats, and then whatever else, because if that's not right, it's just going to sound like a mess. So it's getting the basics, the sample or the vocal, whatever you're using. I mean, in this as well, there is one other sample I use, which is this vocal sample from a good friend of mine.
You can do it.
I've not used all the vocal.
You can feel it.
But
and we can all groove with it.
I was just interested in that because it's adding to the title, so I wanted to call it Feel It, and he's talking about
you can feel it.
You can feel it.
And we can all groove with it.
And it worked really well. So I think the way I worked with that was I tied that in with the bass line. If we play the original, I keep playing the original because this is the mastered version, which sounds a bit better. But
you can feel it. And we can all groove with it.
yeah, this was, if you listen, it's about leaving space.
Yeah.
See, so
You can do it. You can feel it.
and the little
We can all
snares.
groove with it.
You can hear they sort of fill the gaps
You can do it.
in between him and the groove.
You can feel it.
And then when you get the bass coming
We can all
in,
groove with it. You can do it. You can feel
he
it.
talks.
And we can all groove with it.
Do you know what I mean? It's like,
They're calling out to them.
yes.
You can do it.
So there's that sort of dynamic, just keeping it simple, it's not cluttered. So that's one of the things I'll try and do as well, is when you're listening to the track, just don't have all the elements over each other. It's like leave space. I think nowadays when people are producing tracks, there's a lot more room in the tracks, especially with what's gone on with EDM, and I guess with Future House now, it's all very much about the kick drum, very sparse, so all the sounds have got their place. It's more dynamic, rather than maybe house music I grew up on 20 years ago, it was like a wall of sound sometimes, like a very thick layer of music.
Yeah, I guess people were resampling things and they were slightly offbeat and they were re-triggering things with MPCs and SP1200s and samplers and stuff.
Yeah, I used to work with those as well, yeah, exactly. So it was a lot looser and just a different approach. And then just the way music used to be released, the way that you bought music. I mean, this was music that would come out on vinyl, you know, and so the levels of it were only so high, weren't they? Because when you master, if you master too loud, it's the needle's going to jump out of the record. Yeah. Now everything's digital; it's all just maxed out. So I think the way people are producing now, it's like if it's going to be that, everything's got to be really at the forefront. You just need less elements, and everything has their space.
Yeah. And speaking of elements, actually, someone asked how many tracks was Tommy H2. How many tracks are in this in total? I mean, some of that. This is the stems, though, isn't it?
Yeah, if I go, because I was playing the mastered mix, if I just deactivate that, and I've got the original sample there, so I'll just deactivate that as well. So there weren't a lot of tracks really. I mean, on this I have sort of grouped them. I've grouped the stems, so I've just got the basses grouped, and some of the pads, but basically we've got the vocals, we've got the sample stem. Yeah.
Love that vocal.
I know, it's fantastic. So 2 samples. So we've got the main sample, which I've chopped, just, you know, does its thing. We've got this vocal sample.
You can do it.
The drums, I've just grouped them there, obviously, just to display today. It's a lot easier. Bass,
And was that massive too?
massive and silent, yeah. So that is layered. There's about 3 elements that come in there. But I've just grouped them there just to display today. That's definitely massive, yeah, that gives it another add. So there's always layers coming in, so it's building. And then there's some pads. These literally just come in the main breakdown. And this as well. A little ARP sound. So there's only features there. And then the effects, which, you know, there's a lot of space for the effects. So there were a number of tracks, but for me, they're quite simple elements, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not too crazy.
Yeah, nice one. Let me just jump into some questions for you.
Okay.
Seamus is a boss, someone says. He wants to get pizza with you.
All right.
Yeah, hungry?
I love pizza.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Nice one. Let's have a look here and see what we got. Yeah, more people are asking about the kick. I mean, they love that kick drum. Can we hear the kick? Oh, it's in grouped, isn't it? It's a grouped drum stems. We can't hear the kick by
Yeah,
itself.
just because I mixed this down with my engineer and then he bounced the stems out for me. Because when I work with my engineer, we will master it. You know, we'll get it to a sound where I can play it out, and it's pretty much finished.
Yeah, but it was Nicky Romero's, wasn't it? Nicky Romero's.
Yeah, it was on that the plugin he's got where you can basically make up your own drum sounds. Basically, you can make your own kick sound. So we'll sit there for a while, just really concentrate on that, and then add the other elements to it. Yeah. So I'd recommend.
Yeah, it's really good.
I've forgotten the name of it. The Nicky Romero
I think it's just called Kick. B7 officials asking, are you removing resonant frequencies when using auto filter? How did you end up filtering that sample when it filters down? Do you remember what you used for that?
I just used, I remember I did it at home on the basic, just one of the basic plugins.
Auto filter, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the built-in one.
And just did it myself, and it was just to get an idea, and it seemed to work. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'll do that, and then I'll run the stems off and bring that to my engineer, and that's what we'll work with. Yeah. But yeah, it's a good question, because sometimes you can hear sometimes the frequency can get a bit crunchy, and you've got to look at that. So that's a good question.
Yeah, totally.
It's important.
Futorian's asking, what about vocals and sidechain? Have you sidechained this? I mean, doing that sidechain kick against an old disco is a classic franchise, early Daft Punk.
Yeah, we did
kind of vibe,
sidechain it,
yeah.
yes. There's a fair bit of compression there. When I play the mastered version, yeah, that's like a main thing. Again, it gives it room, and even when the vocals come in, the spoken vocal, that will be compressed. So I tend to do it, and even if I'm working on a vocal record or a remix, we'll compress the vocals so that it's got the space to breathe. Rather than just to whack up the volume all the time.
Yeah, nice one. And again, more questions about the kick. Yeah, just Nicky Romero's kick drum.
Go to Nicky Romero's kick.
Yeah. God, we should take commission from Nicky for this for this one.
Yeah.
So unfortunately we are out of time for today's FFL. Hopefully you got plenty of inspiration before the weekend, but if you're thirsty for a lot more, you can learn more sampling and Ableton Live techniques on our diploma courses. So head to pointblanklondon.com to find out more. We'll be back next week with another FFL, so we'll see you then. Cheers.